It is ridiculous to have female Secret Service agents. It is absurd. It's cartoonish. Like, it's laughable. All right, Daily Mail has this report. Shocking footage captured the moment that two female Secret Service agents fought with each other outside former President Barack Obama's $8 million D.C. mansion. The altercation unfolded May 21st at around 2:30 a.m. as the former president's security detail grappled next to a police vehicle. The agent, and there's an audio, the agent says, "Can I get a supervisor down to Delta 2 immediately before I whoop this girl's ass?" It comes a year after a Secret Service agent assigned to then Vice President Kamala Harris was removed from duty after she got into a physical fight with her fellow agents. So here's a quick clip of this altercation. I don't know if there's sound to this. I don't think there is. Let's take a look. No sound. Okay, so there they are. Great. Secret Service agents. That's what you like to see from Secret Service agents, isn't it? Are those Secret Service agents or are they Waffle House patrons? It's impossible to tell. The Waffle Houseification of American society continues, which is great. And by great, I mean catastrophically terrible. So just a review here. Over the past year, multiple Secret Service agents have been suspended for getting into fights with each other on the job. And according to this report that I just read, all of them are female. So add this to the list of very obvious patterns that we're not supposed to notice. And if we do notice, we're not supposed to draw any unapproved conclusions from the pattern that we noticed. And this is the game, you know. The left puts these DEI policies in place, insists that we must diversify, we must include women into traditionally male occupations and so forth. And then when planes start crashing, when helicopters are steered directly into passenger jets, when Secret Service agents are getting into catfights, we're not supposed to see any of that as evidence against the policy, because nothing that happens can ever be evidence against it. So they put the DEI policy in place, and then we say, you know, we really shouldn't do that because this policy will have a bunch of negative consequences. And then they say, oh yeah, what kind of negative consequences? And then we point and say, well, those? Like, you see that? Oh, you see those, like the cat fight between secrets, like that? The female helicopter pilot steering a helicopter directly into a passenger plane, killing dozens of people, like you know, like that kind of thing. And then when we say that, they say, oh, well, you know, those don't count. What other evidence? Okay, well, here, how about this, that, and this? What about this and that? What about that? Yeah, none of that counts. None of it counts. That's the way it goes. It never counts. Every negative consequence is always just somehow an aberration, an exception, no matter how frequent it is, no matter how foreseeable it is. And in reality, you know, this goes to show why it is absurd to include women in these kinds of jobs. It is just ridiculous. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not really sorry. It is ridiculous to have female Secret Service agents. It is absurd. It's cartoonish. Like, it's laughable. There's no good reason for it. There's no legitimate reason to open up these jobs to women. There just isn't. You cannot tell me that there aren't enough qualified men to fill these roles. You cannot tell me that there aren't enough qualified men who would love to be Secret Service agents. I don't believe it. You know, it's nonsense. We aren't putting women in these roles as some sort of desperate last resort. We are, in fact, excluding men specifically so that we can include these women. And it's indefensible. There is no valid reason for it. There just isn't. Women are not fit to be Secret Service agents, period. Why aren't they fit? Well, for one thing, they're too physically weak for the job. They lack the physical strength required to suitably protect the people that the Secret Service are supposed to be protecting. And also, and this is the part that I guess is supposed to be more controversial, also, women are, on average, too emotional for these kinds of jobs. You know, women are much more emotional than men. That's just a fact. And guess what? There's nothing wrong with that. Actually, I think it's great. I'm glad that women, like, my wife is a much more emotional person than I am, which I know you could say is like not saying much. It's a pretty low bar when it comes to emotion with me, but still, she's a much more emotional person than I am. And that's wonderful. I'm glad she is. I'm glad she isn't this like stoic, serious, stone-faced statue like I am. I can't imagine being married to that. Who would want that? So I'm very glad for that. So women being emotional doesn't have to be a problem. It doesn't have to be an indictment. It doesn't have to be a pitfall or a flaw. It only becomes a flaw when we put them in situations where being emotional is a liability, which in many cases it's not. And there are plenty of cases where having, being a more emotional person, being more, empathetic, wearing your heart in your sleeve a little bit more. There are contexts where that's a strength, where that's where you want that. But there are times where it's a liability, and that's a Secret Service agent. Ever wonder what gives elite athletes, business moguls, and high performers their edge? Many are turning to Armra colostrum. This remarkable superfood is nature's original whole food supplement containing over 400 bioactive nutrients that work at the cellular level. Armra helps build lean muscle, speeds up recovery time, and enhances overall performance without relying on artificial stimulants or synthetic ingredients. Whether you're running a company, pushing your limits in training, or simply looking for a natural advantage in your daily life, Armra colostrum optimizes your body's systems for peak performance and sustained energy. Research has demonstrated that colostrum does more than just strengthen performance. It enhances your body's ability to absorb essential nutrients, supports the development of lean muscle mass, and improves endurance. At the same time, it works at the cellular level to accelerate repair and regeneration, helping you bounce back faster after intense physical exertion. Plus, Armra colostrum can also support your microbiome and balance and strengthen immune defenses throughout the body. And who doesn't want a stronger immune system? We've worked out a special offer for my audience. Receive 15% off your first order. Go to tryarmra.com/Walsh or enter Walsh to get 15% off your first order. That's tryarmra.com/Walsh. On the battlefield, right? You want people who are, on average, stronger, less emotional, more stoic. And guess what? That's always going to be men. Okay, that's always going to be men. That's what you need men for. It's like for stuff like that. Yep, you got a job where you need someone with some physical strength, somebody who's a bit more stoic, someone who contains their emotions. A man is always going to be going to fit that bill more. And this is where so much of the modern tension between the sexes comes from. When we hear that sexism is on the rise or whatever, that anti-woman sentiments are on the rise, it comes from this. It comes from insisting that women be crowbarred into positions that they just are not suited for, and that it's okay they aren't suited for. There are roles that men are not suited for. I've said many times, I would never in a million years hire a man to babysit my kids. Not in a million years would I do that. There's just no way. Hiring, and most people feel the same way. Now, of course, the left will respond and say, oh, so you're saying that women are fit for childcare and they're more fit for childcare than they are for being Secret Service agents. That's insulting. Well, I am saying that, yes, but interpreting it as insulting is your choice. That is a reflection of your values and your priorities. Don't project that onto me. I think caring for children is a very important role in society. If you don't think that, that's your problem. So when I say that, women are more fit for childcare, that's not me saying, oh, that's like childcare is this contemptible thing that's beneath. That apparently is the way you look at it. But if you're on the left, I don't see it that way. In fact, from my perspective, caring for my children is more important than protecting the president. Okay, I know that's not the case from the nation's perspective, but from my perspective, if I'm choosing someone to take care of my kids, it's a lot more important to me that that person is suited for the job than it is that a Secret Service agent is suited. I care more about my kids than I do about the president, obviously, and we all do about our own kids. And so my point is that if I'm looking for childcare, let's say, then to me, they're my kids. Like, that's a really important job. Are you kidding me? That's incredibly important. And that's a job where I would always choose a woman. And because I think women are more suited for that. Men and women are different. They're suited for different things. But again, so much of the tension, comes from our denial of this fact. And it's like if there was some law passed that said that every NBA team had to include at least one short person. And the short person has to be a starter on the team, right? At least one person below average height has to be on the court at all times for both teams, right? Now, I have no bias against short people. I don't hate short people. I have no issue with them. I look down at them and I say, "How's it going down there, little guy?" That, I don't, no judgment at all. I pat them on the head and say, "Oh, there, short little guy." I mean, that's, because I'm very nice to short people. But, and I have no hate for them. But I would hate them in that role if they were forced into it. I would hate, if I loved basketball, which I don't really, and the product has already been destroyed by the NBA, but let's just pretend that I like basketball and the product has not been destroyed yet. Well, shoehorning in short people into basketball would destroy the product on the court. And I would hate that. I wouldn't hate them as people, but I would hate them for that role. I would hate them in that position. I would hate that they're in that position. And then you might say, "Oh, well, you hate short people. You have an anti-short person bias." No, I don't. Short people are fine. I have no beef with them. When you randomly demand that they be included in this position where they don't belong, where they're not suited, well, now you've created a context where I am anti-short person in that context. Not in general, but just in that context. But you've created that. You've created this tension that didn't have to be there. So it's the same thing with women. I'm not anti-women, obviously. My favorite person on earth is my wife. She's a woman. I have daughters. I love them more than my own life. I jump in front of a bullet for them without, hesitation. So how can I hate women? It's actually impossible. But I am anti-woman Secret Service agents. I am anti-woman in combat in those particular contexts. So if you're looking around and you say, "Oh, there's all this anti-woman sentiment," well, it's like a lot of it, if not all of it, it comes from taking these groups and just like shoehorning them into contexts where they just don't belong there. And so you are creating that. When you institute these policies, you are creating those contexts where this tension and this these negative feelings are going to come about as a result. So that's how you sort that out. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.